Joining me now is the Foundation of Defense of Democracy's founder and president, Cliff May. Always good to see you, Cliff. Welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
All right, so we've got Monday's talks now on the docket. It'll be Zelensky's first visit to the U.S. since that, explosive Oval Office meeting we all watched in February. So I want to get your take on what happened yesterday in Alaska and what you expect from Monday's meeting. How do you see this going down?
Well, there was not a lot achieved at yesterday's meeting, but President Trump had said all along what he wanted to do was talk to Putin privately to see if Putin was willing to go to a ceasefire, was interested in peace. I think he was probably disappointed in what he heard. Putin doesn't want a ceasefire. I don't think Putin actually wants a deal unless it's a deal that turns Ukraine into what you might call a vassal state. Maybe a state that is demilitarized. There's no way Zelensky's going to go along with that. The good news, of course, is one, that a bad deal wasn't made. It's always better to have no deal than a bad deal. And I think sure Putin was pushing for a bad deal. And I think it's good that President Trump is going to meet with Zelensky soon, Monday. That's important. And with European leaders as well, who are very much on Zelensky's side. They don't want Ukraine dragged back into the Russian Empire.
Yeah, and as we take a look at what he is saying on Truth Social, talking about, a peace accord versus a ceasefire, what do you think of that language, and what do you understand about those two ways of handling it?
Well, I've got to say, I think President Trump had it right earlier. You want a ceasefire, stop the killing, and then negotiations, which are going to take a long time, could proceed to see if you could get to what you might call a truce or an armistice. I think peace is kind of too optimistic a term. It's more likely to be something like we've seen in Korea since 1953. That war never ended in peace. That war ended in or stopped in a truce, in an armistice, in a cessation of hostilities, as it were. I'm afraid that with the fighting going on, it's going to be very difficult to make any progress. And that may become clear very soon. But there's a meeting with Zelensky, and then perhaps the trilateral meeting. I would hope for some progress there. Don't forget, Putin does not want peace. I'm sorry. It's just very clear. He wants victory, and victory for Putin means that the independence, the sovereignty, the freedom of Ukraine comes to an end. And in that way, the Ukrainians are fighting a war of independence. They understand that very well. I thought it was very odd that Sergei Lavrov, who is the foreign minister very close to Putin, showed up at this meeting in a shirt that said in Cyrillic letters, USSR. I think he was saying that, you understand me, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. It's going to be part of Russia as well. I think that's what he was trying to signal. And it may signal that in his mind, the Cold War didn't really end. It just halted in a kind of ceasefire, and it could start again.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because that is something that we have looked at and wondered, what does it all mean, right? And then you've got the flyover that Putin had over his head as well. So not so subtle things that are happening with all of this. So we'll see how that plays out. Go ahead.
There was a lot of messaging going on, a lot that was symbolic. Also, you notice Putin took flowers and put them at the grave of Soviet servicemen from World War II. Now, on the surface, what is he saying? He's saying, you see, we were allies once, we can be again. But keep in mind, we became allies only after Hitler betrayed Stalin. They had a pact in 1939 to divide up Eastern and Central Europe. And then what happened after World War II? Well, the Iron Curtain fell, and about 7 different nations, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Moldova, they all became satellites of the Soviet Union. There's a reason why Putin has erected monuments to Stalin all over the country, not because he's a communist, but because the Russian Empire, as the Soviet Empire, was the largest it had ever been. And that's what Putin wants, to restore the Russian/Soviet Empire. That needs to be understood when dealing with Putin.
Yeah. Listen, the historical perspective is so important, as you just laid out for us, so thank you for that. So everybody's weighing in on this, including Trump. Let's listen to what Trump had to say after the summit and talk on the other side.
We had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant. But we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
So, look, he seems optimistic. Do you think that Trump came out on top? Do you think that Putin did? What do you think?
It was a listening exercise for Trump. I think it was important to him the way he does diplomacy. He wants to understand the other side, and this gave him an opportunity to do that. I can't say I think it was a mission accomplished, but again, no deal is better than a bad deal. The best that you can hope for at this point is that Putin actually says, look, if I end up, at least de facto, with 20% of the territory of Ukraine, including a land bridge to Crimea, which, remember, he took and occupied and annexed in 2014, I'll be satisfied for now. And I'll wait a few years before I go. Putin has been trying to enlarge his empire for a rather long time. Started in 2008 when he took 2 territories away from Georgia, once a Soviet republic, now an independent nation, but more and more becoming a vassal of Russia. In 2014, again, he invaded into Donbass and Crimea. He has been chewing, taking a bite. It's kind of a salami approach, taking a bite at a time. He had hoped when he first went in this most recent time into Ukraine that he would take the whole enchilada, as it were. He didn't do so. And the question is whether he can be satisfied for at least a while. Not clear. We'll know better on Monday and in the trilateral that hopefully comes after that.
All right, Cliff, we've got to leave it there for time. I appreciate it. Foundation for Defensive Democracies and founder and president Cliff May, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.